Tanse. Jen Laderoute nitsikasun. Gagit Lake Alberta Virginia. We had to moyan oma. Kagipiawas siwian. 1950s, 1960s kagihawas siwian. Kumattunim staikoi nigisksin. Nigisksin gift Lake ya. Tansigis nagwak. Awino tahigi huigit. Tansigisip mat sitoi sinuak. Mstais ki miuitihtu nanon, kini suhkamato nanon mina. Kunihmanne miuihtin takiskian. Tansai sinua gisip mat hoto. Ki suhkatuskiwak tahtu gisigaw tap mat hisutau. Mina gisksin. Kihtamagan tapoy. Magmuih pundok skihtinan nikchamak siya kuininan. Kawasiuyan. Magkwento hayan anom sisik ko ikaw wihtasik. Like, taiskut. Waskutip tsigana. Gimos tsigwapiganan. Nagimos tsipuninan. Muy mina, pagwispiawiak nandaw. Uchipama chahuigay kichanaki guayo tapanas kwa kiuhitato mina. Miskanawa muy uchimiosna. Anuskawi mamskuta manuma. Kani pikmana. Meo wasak gaywa kaksnaimaksato kani pik. Gipampitsito manay sinuwak. Yaguman utskawih mamskutaman. Dipagsimon, tamiwih tamikuhe atamona. Hi, my name is Jen Laderoute, and I'm from Gift Lake, Alberta. I'm telling stories on YouTube about my childhood, the memories I have of growing up in a poor, isolated community in the north. I was a child in the 1950s, 1960s. But I remember a lot. I remember how people lived, how people made a living. I remember my community and how it functioned so well as a community. People helped each other out. People got along. Yes, we were a small community, probably about 150 people, I would say, of my earliest memories. We didn't have any modern conveniences, amenities. We didn't have a communication system, like no phones, no TV. The only way we had of knowing or hearing news of what was going on outside of our community was radio. Pretty much everyone had a radio, the kind that hooked up to a car battery. So that was our news source. And, you know, maybe people went out to Greward or High Prairie, our neighboring communities. They might come back with news. Other than that, we were pretty much isolated. Today I'm talking about summer holidays and what people did during the summer holidays. And I hope, it is my hope that you enjoy these stories. Summer holidays back then were very different from today. First of all, summer holidays were for everyone when school was out. Not necessarily a holiday, though. A lot of them were working trips, and I'll talk about that. But the way people lived then, it was possible for these types of holidays, for the families to go along with the father to where he is working, for example, or to go visit family in other communities and stay, you know, several nights or a week. If you make the trip there, and this was horse and wagon days, you're going to stay for a while. So yeah, we spent much of our summer camping, but not like today. No beach, no swimming, no RVs, that's for sure. As I mentioned, we went by horse and wagon. Was a lot of work. Was a lot of, like, wherever we were going, we went by horse and wagon. It was a lot of work for both my mom and dad. My mom had so much to pack. So much to pack. Not only did she have to pack our clothes, she had to pack blankets for 8 children. I come from a family of 10, but there was about 8 of us that were the younger age group. The older brothers didn't really come with us on our trips, except for the odd time. But yeah, Mom, she had to pack food. She had to pack towels and the wash basin. She had to pack her wash tub. She had to pack dishes, pots and pans, medicines, so much that she had to pack and not forget. She had to pack pails. If we were going on a berry picking excursion, she had to make sure there was a pail for everyone to use and pails for hauling water. My dad, he had to go get the horses, harness them up, hitch them up to the wagon. The older boys would help him do that. And then he would have to pack the wagon. Big canvas tents. A stove where Mom could cook on, and even had a little oven. It took up a lot of space. Then Dad had to remember to pack things like an axe, hammer and nails, other tools that he might need. Maybe even a power saw of some kind to cut down, our firewood. So yeah, it was a lot of work. And then once we got going, it was fun. It might take us a whole day to get to our destination, but as kids, it was an adventure. We would run ahead of the wagon to see what was around the next bend. We would pick berries along the way, if there was some growing on the side of the road, just eating them. So we played along the way. And when we got there, it was, again, a lot of work. My mom never ever looked at camping as a fun leisure thing to do like we do today. Oh no, for her, camping was work. So she doesn't even see how people view camping as a leisure time and a fun thing to do. We would get there, and then the first thing that would happen is, as kids would go out and pick firewood, just little firewood to get a fire going. My dad would take care of the horses. Then he would get wood, and then he would go find poles for the tents. Maybe sometimes we might have 2. Mom got busy cooking a meal for us, and then she would make the beds for all of us. We helped where we could, but I remember I was quite young when we went on these trips. So yeah, it was work, but it was fun. Well, it was work for Mom and Dad. I remember quite often they would get grouchy with each other. As I mentioned, some of these were visiting trips. We had family in Mink Creek, which is about 3 hours away by horse and wagon. And we had family there, so we went and spent part of the summer visiting there. I loved it there. There was a lot for kids to do there. We would travel to Greward. Greward is like 30-minute drive away today. But by horse and wagon, it took us the full day. Well, actually, I remember when we had the older wagon that went really slow, had wooden spokes and a steel rim or something like that. We would have to stop and camp once before reaching Greward. Then the roads got better, straighter, and we had a Bennett wagon that has car tires, something like what you see used for hay rides today. That was what we had, and we went faster, and we could make it to Greward in one day. We'd leave fairly early in the morning, like maybe, 9 o'clock, and we'd get there in the evening, sometime in the evening. My grandpa lived there and some uncles lived there. And to me, Greward was a town then. It had a few stores. That was the first time I ever saw a bubblegum machine, was in Greward. Then I remember one time we were coming home and it was gonna storm. You could see the clouds coming. We could hear thunder in the distance, and my dad was just making the horses go as fast as they could. He was making them go. I thought we were trying to get home because I had no concept of distance at that time. But we were trying to get to a place called Mailman's Cabin, where we would have shelter. Mailman's Cabin was called that because it was built by a mailman. So he would have a place to stop and camp on his trips up north. His name was Frank Nibb, and he actually built that little cabin. Thanks to Linda McLeod, our local historian, for providing me with that information, because I never knew exactly who built it until just before I was going to tell this story. So thank you, Linda. We spent the night there. I mean, that cabin was there for anyone to use if they needed it. So we spent the night there. I remember sleeping on the floor, and it was storming, thundering, lightning, raining, but we were safe and dry in that little cabin. So that's a great memory that I have. We went to the High Prairie Stampede twice. The first time I remember going, we stopped to camp one night, and then we got to the High Prairie Stampede grounds maybe later in the afternoon. I remember the Stampede had a midway, something we had never seen before, rides like that. But there was only 2 rides. There was a Ferris wheel and a carousel. That was what the midway was. And we had fun riding them both, you know. At the time, there would be quite a few other people that came by horse and wagon and set up tents. There were a lot of tents and even some teepees. And people would arrive. I remember we arrived a couple days before the Stampede, and then we stayed a couple days after, and people would just visit. And then I remember coming home by way of High Prairie. Then we stopped at Anilda to, I had an auntie that lived there to visit for a couple of days. and came on home through Gruard. The second time we went by horse and wagon, same thing, we had to stop and camp, but the Midway had way more rides. It was great. And then we came home through Big Prairie. We stopped at a farmer's, his name was Harry DeJong, something like that. And my dad asked him if we could camp at his farm somewhere on his land for a couple of nights so we could pick Saskatoons on his land. And he was like, oh, fine with it. Yes, stay as long as you want. And that was how people were back then. And so we stayed and camped at this place for 2-3 nights. I don't remember, picking Saskatoons. And that was another good memory I have. We went to we went on trips just to pick berries. So it would depend on where the berries grew and the time of the summer they would be ready for picking. So we made several different trips, different places. And I know other families also made those type of trips, berry picking, and some would combine picking berries with picking medicines. Those are fun trips. I love picking berries. And then we were told, you don't eat any berries until you're done your pails. Like we each had a quota of pails, like we had to pick so many. And oh, those berries looked so good and I couldn't eat them till I was done my quota. But it taught us to work hard and fast, I guess, and to focus on our task so we could get the reward later of being able to pick for ourselves after. It taught us self-control, self-discipline. So it was more than just picking berries. One time, and we'd make games out of it. Like we would race, see who would fill their pail first. And this one time, my little brother, Donald, he's made it to a few of my videos. And this one too, he was pretty young. Maybe he was 4 or 5 years old. You know, he was probably the youngest that was picking. And we had a race. Even though his pail was smaller, he was included in the race. So we raced who'd, fill the first pail. And he's like, I'm done. Like in no time at all. I'm done. My pail is full. Wow, okay. Like we looked at his pail. It was just full right to the top. The berries, they were just full. And my older brother said, wait a minute, give me that pail. So Donald hands it over to him. And my brother dug into the pail, and sure enough, it was full of leaves. 3/4 of it was leaves and berries on top. He got caught. Another place we went every summer, I don't know, we spent probably 2 weeks there, maybe longer. We used to go in August, where my dad made hay. We had cattle up to the late 60s and horses to feed in the winter. So we went to Rat Lakes. Not a very nice name. But there was a bunch of lakes there, and he made hay around those lakes, wild hay. And it was a fun place to be. Of course, there was lots to do for us as kids. There was a great big hill that right next to where we used to camp. We had to help, of course. You know, it was a working trip. And my dad used like horse-drawn equipment to cut the hay, also to rake it. And then we made little haystacks out of, we used pitchforks. Yeah, pitchforks from about age 7 to maybe age 11, somewhere in that age group. We each had a pitchfork and we made little haystacks. And then we would play in them haystacks, then we'd have to make them again. It was fun though. And then Dad would come along with the Bennett wagon and pick up the little haystacks, and we would help load them on. And we'd end up having a hay ride back to our camp. So those were fun days. My bigger brother took me with him one time to go and pick duck eggs. And we found lots. We found enough to have, for the family to have them for supper. So that was a fun time. Another time he took me out on the lake. He went to go, see if he could shoot some ducks in a canoe. No life jackets or nothing. My mom was so mad at him, was so upset with him, but I had fun. I didn't know how to swim. Hopefully he knew how to save me if something happened. Another time we went with Dad to go where he was working. He was, what do you call it? He was logging. Yeah, he was logging. And it was that shortcut. And we camped right by the road. There was like maybe 3 other families that were there for the summer or a good part of the summer. Shortcut is only like a 5-minute drive from Gift Lake today. But at the time it was, 2 hours to get there. And so we lived there for a good part of the summer while Dad was logging. Another place we spent another summer was a place called Lake 60. Now that was out in the middle of nowhere, like way out in the bush. I wasn't too impressed with that camping trip. I was 15 years old. I was a teenager, so I was, way past this camping with a family. It was so boring. But one thing I do remember about Lake 60 is we had a little TV, a little battery-powered TV that was 12-inch screen. And it worked. Way out there in the bush, it worked. And we watched the 1969 moon landing on that TV. I think that's what I remember from Lake 60 was watching the moon landing. A milestone for the world. I got to watch it even though I was out in the bush. As soon as we got home, we would race to the garden to see how much it had grew. That was the first thing we would do. Pull out a couple of carrots to eat. There were many trips. I don't have time to talk about all of them. But I loved those trips. I loved how we spent our summer holidays. Other families in Gift Lake did the same thing. They went somewhere. Ipam pichik is what we would say in Cree, for different purposes. So that's about all I can cover today with my story. It is my hope that you enjoyed it. Egose maga.